Hey y'all, this is Thomas with Project Portland. We're planning a church in Portland, Oregon, and we're starting the podcast to talk about it. You can follow along. I hope you'll join us in our journey as we talk about the things that we learn while we're planting. And I have special guests, friends in ministry along, that talk about the behind the scenes of what it's like to take the gospel to a new place. Hey everyone, and welcome to Planning Portland. This is Thomas, and I'm with my friend David, and our podcast is all about church planning and what God is doing in our life and our ministry. And today, you've got a good one. It's a special privilege for us to be able to have David, our co-planter, with us on the podcast. David, we started this podcast, me and you, and then I've interviewed like all kinds of other people, and we haven't got back around to you being back on here. And we actually started, our first one was like an hour and something, and then it didn't record.
Yeah.
And then I had to put out like a little snippet.
Yeah, I forgot we actually did talk for a little bit. I just remember the like 5-minute intro we did.
Yeah, I think that's probably typical of church planning, is like, how's this thing that didn't work out?
Yeah, but we learned from it. Like everyone, thankfully, the people that came and left, you didn't find out after they left that theirs didn't work. So
yeah, that's true.
We figured it out with ourselves, and the rest of them have been cool. I've actually enjoyed, even though like when we first started, it was like, hey, we're going to do this. And it's kind of been cool that the first 10 or 11 or 12 episodes, you've had other people here, so I've kind of been content to like hear other people talk before we actually ever did one of these ourselves. So I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed listening to every episode that's come out. It's been a blessing to me to hear from all those guys and guys that are a little better at it than me. So learning from watching them talk, it's been cool.
Yeah. Well, I'm thankful for them. When we started, let's start a podcast, I was nervous for the amount of work and what are we going to say? And some of those guys filled the slots for us to get us down the road that we could start figuring some things out. So I'm super grateful for them. But I'm glad to have you. Probably like when I had James DeCoker on recently, it was one of my favorite episodes just because the connection is so real. We came from Oakland Heights. James was our sending pastor and just a delight of a man. But you and I get to slug it out. We were here earlier today in the same spot having our staff meeting, talking about ministry stuff, and now we just get to do it with cameras on. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to that. But why don't you just tell us about yourself, man? I mean, give us your story.
Like just a testimony kind of thing?
Yeah, whatever you want to share.
Up to where we met, maybe?
Yeah.
Cool. So I probably have a testimony that's pretty familiar to a lot of people. Grew up in church my whole life. Parents that were involved in ministry since before I was born and serious about their faith. Grew up in Mexico. My parents were missionaries, so that they left Decatur, Alabama when I was about 6. And then I grew up from 8 to 18-ish on the mission field in Mexico. So definitely like a great relationship with my family, a good upbringing, really in every way. So I think my testimony, I say familiar because you always think that like nobody has this testimony, then you realize a lot of people grew up in church and do have a similar testimony. But I mean, I was saved. I don't remember ever a time not believing in God or being away from my faith at all. I do remember a time when it was kind of like, I never remember not believing it, but I do remember the time that I got saved when it was like, I can recall easier back to seeing my kids go through this of like, of course, them growing up in church. I don't think they ever didn't believe that what we were telling them was true, but there was a time where they realized, it's not just a story. I've done things that I need to be forgiven for. And so that time for me was probably about 6 or 7. And like I said, kind of like what's typical with kids is, you hear the Bible stories, again, with my kids, like from the time they were 3 or 4, if you say, well, why did Jesus die on the cross? Like, he died for my sin, but they don't really know what that means. They just believe that it's true, which is a good start. But anyway, that was true for me. And so, I got to that age of understanding that, okay, actually, no, my sin itself had consequences and I need to be forgiven for specific things. And I got saved when I was 6 or 7, like I said, and was involved in church and ministry my entire life. Never had a time that I felt like I ran from ministry. I do think something that's maybe not unique to me personally, but kind of unique to missionary kids as a whole, is I do think there was a time where, although I didn't fall away from my faith, there was certainly a time that, so Austin and I have been going through the will of God and plan of God lesson, so it's kind of brings it right back to my memory that there was never a time that I didn't understand the will of God for my life and that I was not searching for that and seeking that out. But there's definitely a time like I had no idea what his plan was. Because at 18, I moved away. It's like, I have no doubt what God called my parents to do. I don't think that's what he wants me to do, but I don't really know what to do with my life. And then at 18, it's like, you're going to school and getting a job, and we got married young. So it's like, you're very quickly just trying to keep your head above water and like really being calm enough to think about what it is that God wants you to be doing in those times. I think is where a lot of people drift, not even on purpose. So I think I spent a fair amount of time kind of directionless in my faith. And it kind of just hit me around the time we had Sydney that it was kind of like, if you're not growing, you don't really just get to be stagnant and neutral. You're either growing, you're feeding the flesh, or you're feeding the spirit. Like you're kind of going in one direction or another. You're either pursuing your own interests and desires, and that's going to pull you away, or you're pursuing the direction that God has for your life. You kind of can't be super neutral. And I kind of realized that unintentionally. That's kind of what I was doing. It's like we're just kind of getting our life in order, and we're going to end up where we are just because we never left. And so around that time, young 20s is everything was okay. We were going to church. We were fine, but we just were not in a place where we were growing. And I think always growing up in churches that were solid Bible teaching, disciple making churches, I kind of took for granted that every church was that way. So in that, again, not intentional, but kind of a like, oh, well, this is what I'm doing with my life. And like, I'll just find a church to be a part of that's close. And then you realize like, there's just not everywhere churches to be a part of. And so that kind of led us to that place of just being where we were. And so for Lori and I both at the same time kind of got to that place of realizing we need to be in a place that's going to grow us, or we're just going to stay where we are and slowly pull away from our faith and never grow. And it was my parents that I talked to them about, and they're like, well, if I had to come back, my dad said, he's like, if I had to go back to the States and find a church to go to, I would go to Cartersville and go to Joe's church. And so we're like, all right. And so we started looking. It took a little while because I was working as a firefighter in South Georgia. And so that's not something you just immediately move over. But I started, it was that we came up for a missions conference to visit the church because Lori had never been there, had never met Joe. Joe McKeag, for those who don't know who I'm referencing. He's at Decatur Baptist now, but him and my dad came up in ministry together at Decatur Baptist. After my parents left, Joe came to Cartersville. And so there was always that connection. Like I've known Joe. I think Joe has known my family since before I was born. So I've kind of always known him. And so anyway, we went and visited, and then I just started applying for fire departments around Cartersville. And it actually, for that kind of a process, went pretty quick. I think it was 4 or 5 months before we got moved to Cartersville. And that brought us up to close to meeting you. I think you guys came within the next year that we got there.
17.
Yeah, we moved there in January of 16, so a little over a year. So that brought us up to when we met you guys. And that was really a great thing for us. Again, not Lori and I both growing up in Christian homes, getting saved when we were kids. And I think neither one of us like running or being rebellious in our faith, but it's so easy to just get to a point to where life gets busy and you just drift away. And I think that's where we were both at, of just, if you're not growing, you're just kind of sliding back a little bit.
Yeah.
And, but Oakland Heights was just like, man, a breath of fresh air to be plugged in. And we both went back through discipleship. I had done that when I was younger. So although doctrinally, I don't think it was like, none of it was new, but coming at it as an adult, the maturity, I do think there is a certain amount of physical maturity you have to grow past certain things. And, so I don't say this in any way against my parents, because like they did great, but I think having that time limit of at 18, all of us moved back to the house, and not just like, okay, you're an adult, but moved to a different country, and that was it. So, I think for all of us, we all went through that period of like, we got to figure it out for ourselves pretty fast. Like God's plan for our life now. So, but it was great to be back in a place where it's like, man, discipleship is in the DNA. And after that, there's always a plan for growth after. And there's just a life to it that we just didn't have anywhere else. And so it was great being at Oakland Heights. Just slowly, nothing really crazy. We just got involved in ministry. The first few places we were asked, we started a nursery, did just kind of odd and end things for quite a while, doing just whatever we could. We were having kids at that time, so life was a little crazy. We had, I forget how young they were, but we had Brooklyn in Cartersville. So I think Sydney was under 2 and Cole was under 1 or something like that. So life was a little crazy when we first got there, but
I think when I first showed up, Lori had a gift for us or for our kids or something.
Yeah.
And Bing was just one, I think. And I remember she was pushing a stroller for maybe a newborn, was it one of your kids, or a small one?
Yeah, it may have been, I don't remember what time in 2017 you guys got there, but Brooklyn was born in 2017. So it might have been Brooklyn, or it might have been Cole still being like under 2.
Well, either way, like we had babies in Cartersville, and now we're here in Portland. And our babies are growing up. It's a different season of life, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But Cartersville is a sweet season where, I mean, I didn't know you existed. I've heard of your dad because I was friends with Jeff Bartell. So I was actually supposed to go to Mexico when my wife and I were surrendering to missions and all of that. And long story short, we didn't make it for that particular thing. But I didn't know about you. And there's 4 Allred boys, right?
Yeah.
So one of them's still in Mexico. Mm-hmm. One of them's at Oakland Heights. One's in Alabama.
Yep.
And here you are in Portland.
Yeah.
What was it like with your older brother? It seems like he knew his call was like, I want to come back to Mexico. Mm-hmm. I want to be a missionary. I want to be a pastor. Did you ever feel like you had to compete with that, or what was that like?
No, I never felt like I competed with that. I did sometimes feel like he was very sure. I think he was 14 or 15 when he was like, well, I know God wants me to be a missionary. And there was at least outwardly like never a doubt about it. And I mean, all the way till he graduated early so he could go to Bible college early, graduated Bible college, did an internship, got ordained, and did deputation, was back in Mexico. It was like 8 years, but it was like, I don't think there was ever a waiver in that's what he intended to do. And he is that way. Like he's very much like that kind of personality. So if you've met him, that kind of makes sense. But no, I never felt like I had to compete with that anyway. Another thing that I think my parents always did well was never compare us to each other or be like, hey, you all 4 have to do the same thing or be the same way. I think they were always not in like this soft, just be you kind of person thing, but they were very supportive of letting us be different people. Like, hey, God, again, we had that grasp early on of like, hey, God's will is going to be the same for all of you, but his plan won't be, and that's okay. You don't have to do the same things. You don't have to be missionaries. I really do appreciate a lot, though, something that my dad always would say. He said, every kind of goes back to the will of God thing. He would say every Christian is called to full-time ministry, but not everyone is necessarily called to vocational ministry. So it may not be your paid job, but every Christian has the same calling. And that's kind of that will of God and plan of God thing of, all of us have a life of ministry to live, but you don't have to be a missionary or a pastor, but you need to serve and be faithful. And your life should revolve around, he would just call it would be full-time ministry, whether you're paid for it or not. Yeah. And I do think that's one of the biggest things that my parents did for us. I say this jokingly, but I mean it very respectfully. I think the biggest thing they did for us boys is they really modeled a life of such purpose that even whether we realized it or not, we probably couldn't ever be content not being involved in ministry because anything else we could see didn't have eternal purpose and value. There's definitely something to be said to work hard, be diligent, provide for your family, be responsible and all those things. But that's not what you're made to do. As a Christian, we all have the same calling, no matter how it looks. And so I think that was modeled so well for us that all of us at some point have now, whether it's vocational ministry, but all of us, I would say, have a pretty full-time ministry type life. Even though we're not all like on staff at a church or missionaries or anything. Yeah.
But that's always been an encouragement to me to see your family as being a pastor in ministry with 3 sons. And growing up, being a rebel and a black sheep away from the church world, I don't feel like there's a whole lot of good examples of, I'm not saying there are none, but people in ministry that their family doesn't fall apart. Right. So to see your whole family still plugging away, serving Jesus, man, it's just such an encouragement to me that it's possible for my kids to serve the Lord as well. And what a privilege that would be in full-time vocational ministry or not, to be making disciples. Just like I sat here with someone from Casa Discipleship a little bit ago. We talked about John 15, be fruitful. Whether you're a pastor or not, you're going to glorify your Father by being fruitful. You can do that with a job without well, you're still going to have a job.
Yeah.
whatever your job is, you're going to be
exactly.
fruitful in that. But if we go back to Oakland Heights, 2017, I show up, youth pastor, don't really know anybody. We're all figuring each other out. At some point, you expressed interest in children's ministry, which is how we kind of got connected, right? Eventually, that slot became open, and you started leading children's ministry and got a lot of experience there. So you want to tell us about maybe some ministry experience before coming to Portland?
Yeah. So as you said, we did, a few different things at Oakland Heights, serving as we grew, like we started discipleship and like we were just serving in nursery and doing things like you should. It wasn't like we were super special and came in and just took over ministries or anything like that at all. But if I'm honest, I don't remember what all we did. I remember we were in the nursery for a while. I don't know that I think we did serve in children's ministry a little bit. We served in angel ministry. We did different things, just kind of wherever we were asked to serve. But yeah, where we really stepped into a leadership role and I feel like really grew the most was definitely in children's ministry. Was it 2019? I don't remember. I remember it was like right at the maybe
2020, everything fell apart and we reorganized a lot.
We were getting involved in it. And then when COVID hit, we were involved but not leading it. And then coming out of COVID, we were leading it. So I think it was probably 2020. I don't remember what month though. But yeah, we you were the pastor over that, of course. And then we stepped in to lead children's ministry. And I think it's odd because that wouldn't have ever been a ministry that I would have thought would have been something I wanted to do. Like, I don't think I'm kind of like the most warm, fun person or like kid entertaining kind of guy. But I definitely had a burden. And I think that's just the reality of what God does for you in ministry is like, if he wants you to do something, all of a sudden kind of unexpectedly, you have a burden for it. And it's like, man, I don't want to do that because it sounds fun, but I want to do that because I feel like that's super important. And that's what God wants me to do right now. And that's how I felt about children's ministry was like, I just had a burden that, it was something really important. And I think I can say this without being like negative, but I felt like it was a little directionless in some ways.
It needed
there was some falling out after, some things that happened at the church and things kind of just got left. And I think that was the burden I had was like, and some of it too is like, being a parent with kids in that age range, I'm seeing the importance of that in my kids. And it's like, man, this is important for everybody's kids right now. And so I think that was really what drove that burden for me was just seeing what my kids needed and looking around other kids and being like, all of our kids need this. They need deeper Bible teaching. They need direction. They need structure. They need just a lot of things. And so I certainly had a burden for it. So coming into it. And I think the leadership aspect was great for us because it wasn't just like we taught kids classes, although we did. And we learned a lot. I think starting to teach by teaching kids is a great place to start teaching. If you can teach kids, you can teach adults because they'll ask you more awkward, more great questions. But like sometimes adults are embarrassed to admit they don't know something or ask an easy question. Like kids are just going to ask you and you're going to have to be like, because they're going to ask you if they think it, they're going to say it. And, but not just that, but like, that's really what all of teaching is. The more you understand, the more you have to be intentional about breaking it down to an easier to understand level. So, doing that with kids is the same thing you do with adults, just not quite as much. And so I think learning to do that, taking what the Bible is saying and helping them see it, distilling it down into simple ideas that they can understand. That's what teaching is. So I think that was another part of the burden we had was not just for the kids, but also like, man, we're really squandering an opportunity to teach people how to teach. Because like a lot of children's ministries, I felt like we were just doing a lot of curriculum, like show up and read this story from this book. And I felt like we were kind of losing a whole aspect of training of allowing people to learn how to study the Bible to teach kids. It was like these stories are fine, but it's not, a lot of it's not really teaching the Bible. We're teaching people how to read a story. So I think our burden right off the bat was kind of twofold. It was, and I think that developed naturally into how our ministry is although we were the children's directors, it's like probably less than half of our ministry was really directly ministering to the children and families. And it was, leading and ministering to the other leaders. I think kind of at the peak of our time in children's ministry, we had 70-ish, 76 or 78 people that served with us in children's ministry. And so like, that's just a lot of logistics, a lot of classrooms and a lot of movement and not just the logistics of it, but again, if the whole intention is to develop leadership through this process, there's a lot of kind of discipleship type things that are going on, counseling, and most of the people that are teaching, they have their own kids, and their own kids are asking questions at home that they don't know how to answer, and they're asking us about this. And so it was a good experience for us to learn to lead other adults in that way too. So yeah, I mean, I think so much of that experience was relevant to what God's having us do now.
Yeah, of course. Well, all that ministry experience prepared you to come here just to not do children's ministry.
Yeah, we're no kids outside of ours. It's funny.
But the reps of, like you said, especially with the discipleship philosophy, we're not just filling slots, but we're developing people through that, developing leaders. And y'all did just excellent at administrating all the people and all the things. Awana's would run, 20-something volunteers on a Wednesday?
35 or 36.
On a Wednesday night. Just so many adults to make things happen. It was such a smooth ship when you guys were running it. It was sweet. But eventually we came to Portland. We have to fast forward a little bit if we want to get to what we want to talk to today. But we take a survey trip. You're on the survey trip with us. I think you and I at some point had a conversation like, wouldn't it be wild if we go to the Northwest someday? I don't know why we were even talking like that. We just had an interest in it. And then we got voluntold on the survey trip. We're going to Portland and Seattle. And, here we were. We fast forwarded. Michael paired us up together, scout the land out. And then we came back and you were like gung ho, like, yeah, I'll go. I think in that time, I don't want to take all your story from you, but you wouldn't have identified wanting to be a church planner, but you said you would go. And then it took me some time to develop into, is this what I'm really going to do? Wrestling with a call and that sort of thing. And since then, it's been a couple years now, fast forwarding into where we are today. And it's just amazing what a handful of years will do as far as our ministry service. You talk about children's ministry, and it's just very different now. You're leading a college Bible study, and it's wild. Maybe you want to talk about that for a second, like the difference in established church versus here, or even just for you personally, how your ministry has changed.
Yeah, you mean, and it's like just in its structure and stuff, or what do you mean by that? Yeah,
it's a question you weren't prepared for.
Yeah, what? Oh, that's all good. I think definitely it prepared us in a lot of ways because again, it's kind of like a lot of the ministry philosophy and things are very similar. It's definitely it's different. Can you repeat the question?
Well, like tonight, you were on, before you came here, you're on Portland State University campus in a classroom having a powwow with a bunch of college students. Just a few years ago, you were a firefighter leading children's ministry, and like life has just changed dramatically.
Yeah. I think for sure it's definitely all different, but it's kind of like pretty much the same, I guess. Coming from a very robust and very structured ministry, there is definitely like a lot of security in that, which is like why it's a great place to grow and learn and train. And then when you're kind of doing things on your own, like there is no structure, there's no safety net in place, there's nothing to fall back on. And so I think to compare them is probably not fair because I don't think that one is easier than the other, because in a lot of ways, like we've talked about this before, structured ministry is hard because it's complicated, but there is safety nets that sometimes make it easy. You have if you call out like, okay, there is someone who can fill in for you. There's someone who has done this before that can probably help you. There's someone with an answer that you can probably find. But yeah, doing things, in a church plan is simpler. It's like there's not very much going on, but doesn't mean it's easy. Complex can have its own difficulty. And simplicity can be not complex and simple, but still like a hard thing to do. And I definitely think there is a serving in children's ministry, although I had that structure, like I didn't have to try to figure out what night we should meet or where we should meet. It's like, no, we have these classrooms in this gym on Wednesday nights when there's prayer service going, like this is what we do. So it took out a lot of the figuring out for me. It was just like, you have to lead these people doing this thing on this night in this time frame with this hour, preferably using this curriculum. So like it's complex. There's a lot of moving parts, a ton of people involved. And that has, again, its own difficulty. But it was very structured and laid out for you. You knew what the expectation was. People in our community came to Awanas because they knew what it was. You're not trying to convince people they should come to this Awana thing that you just made up this year.
Yeah.
So definitely there's a difference in there kind of being nothing. There's freedom in it, but it's also like scary there's no plan. It's like, is Tuesday a good night? Well, I guess so, because we got a room. So I guess that works. And we got people coming. So yeah, I think it's definitely like a transition, but what I was getting at with that is, although there was a ton of complexity and certain things in place, serving under you where you had all the other ministries, we had a ton of not just freedom, but a ton of responsibility to like figure it out. Like, you didn't tell me like, hey, we need this many people in this classroom and this many people in that classroom. And we had to make those decisions of, well, we got like 30 kids in this one grade. We have to split that. That means we have to have new teachers. That means we have to double the curriculum. That means it's going to affect our budget. We were given enough freedom to learn those things that now when we're here and it's like, hey, you need to come up with a budget. You need to figure out, what you're going to need. Do you need a classroom? It's kind of like, okay, I kind of understand how to think through those things. It's not like I've never been asked to come up with that kind of stuff before. So I think definitely our relationship serving in ministry together was very helpful because we knew how to work together. It's different for sure. Kind of, again, not comparing easier or harder. It's different. You're not a pastor, you're the pastor, where before it was like there was you, but then there was also, I was also with the deacons, and like, so I had other insights into the budget and the way things worked. And then, James is our senior pastor. And so it was kind of like there was another level of authority. So like our relationship was good and close, but it's also different now.
Yeah.
Because we're both in different roles.
Yeah. Well, I think I trusted you so much in children's ministry. We met and talked about stuff, but eventually we met less, I think. And y'all just kept working the system, if you will. And we'd talk about budgets or decisions, but there was a lot of trust. And that trust carried over to Portland, to where when I'm doing too many things, I'm like, here, man, take this Bible study. And you're like, sure. And you just kill it. And I haven't been there to see you lead it yet, right?
I don't think so.
I don't think I've been there to see you do that since you took it over. So to me, that's a lot of trust of like, that's honestly going better. There's more guests, more connections for you running it than me. And I don't feel like I need to be there. I don't feel like I need to do everything because I trust you. You're worthy. That's why I call you my co-planter. I don't know if that's a real title or not.
I don't know.
But I value you that much that we make decisions together a lot. We sit here and talk about all kinds of things. We put things on the screen. We're functioning together a lot. So I suppose if anybody's listening, like having a solid relationship before you go somewhere together is probably a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Know each other, have some reps, and be ready because everything will be tested. The first year is like pretty difficult.
Yeah.
And I think we were fine. We never really fought, but just all the stuff, you want to just lock that one down, But now we're if we fast forward to Portland and we're here today, you come with us on a church planting team. We bring 6 adults and 6 kids, and praise the Lord, we got some more adults and some stuff that's been happening since then. You came not as a pastor, not supported either. So take that any way you want, but maybe explain that one.
Sure. Yeah, kind of as you said, I was asked to come on this trip, which I was excited to come. It wasn't like, we were forced to come in anyway. It was exciting to be able to come and to be kind of on the front end of praying about a new work. You had mentioned, you had said something about planning a church, and honestly, I think that was either right when we started children's ministry or before we did, because it was kind of like that was so far out of the question. We talked about it like one day. You're talking about we used to meet. We would get together, I think, once a month, and we would try different barbecue places. If I remember right, we'd go to like a bunch of different places.
And there's plenty in the South.
Yeah, we hit like a bunch of different barbecue places. That was kind of our thing for a little while.
That's right.
And I think it just came up casually at one of those lunches that we had. We were like, man, I would love to pastor one day, and I would love to plant a church somewhere, like the North, and I think you even said Seattle. You're like, somewhere like Seattle, it's like just out there. We have no fellowship churches out there, don't really know anything about it. And I think that was some of the intrigue is like, doesn't mean there's no Christians or people doing churches. It's just like, we don't know anything about it. And I think it came up that one time, and I don't remember it ever coming up again. And that was, like 4 or 5 years in between. So it was kind of cool though, that it wasn't like at the forefront of our mind, but I think some of that is that growth and patience of like, and then you just put it away because there's other things like that God actually has you doing, and you're not thinking
And
about
we
it.
were busy enough in ministry.
Yeah,
We didn't need to
I
think
really don't
about
ever
it.
think it came back up until all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, we're going to go on this trip to Seattle and Portland." I was like, "Oh, that's cool." It was interesting because there still wasn't like, "Hey, Thomas has been talking about this for 5 years. We're going to go see if he wants to go plant a church." They didn't really ask you about it either. It was not our idea. So it was kind of neat that I think from the get go, I felt like if this is what we're going to do, I'm willing. Like I'm willing to go do that. And we were at a place that it's like, okay, realistically, we could. So even though, and I'll talk about it more in a minute, because I think this is some of the topic you want me to discuss, but like kind of the availability we had for ministry, it was kind of like, how sometimes you have to pray about decisions, but then sometimes decisions come up and you're like, well, I've actually been praying about that. I didn't know that was a thing, but that's what I've been praying about for a while. So I kind of already know the answer. I felt a little bit about Portland, to where it was kind of like, well, we have been praying about being willing to do whatever God wants. So if this is the thing he wants, I've already prayed about being willing to do it. So obviously there was different, we'll get into that more, but I kind of already felt like, man, if we're going to try to plant a church in the Northwest, I'm willing to go if the pastors will send me. Not as a pastor, I think I said that kind of right away. Like, I'm not ready to be a pastor. I don't feel like I'm the guy to lead it, but I'm certainly willing to go and to help do every other thing I can do to support it. So that was kind of my mentality coming into that trip. So it was kind of out of nowhere, but it was kind of neat. And like you said, even being paired up together, me and you, I did feel like God was kind of confirming to me that we were supposed to come. But at the same time, with that level of like, but it's not my call. So we could go back and then just say like, okay, never mind, we're not ready to plant a church. And it would be like, okay, that's okay too. Yeah, it was definitely a neat trip for me. I think just, it was hard though, because when the rubber meets the road and it's actually real, it's like, okay, we're actually might say yes to this. It's easier to be willing before you see what you're saying yes to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it, it's like, oh, we might actually have to do this. It was, that first trip was tough in a lot of ways. It wouldn't have been bad if it was just a visit. But I think from the get-go, I was like, well, if we're going to plant a church, I think God might want me to come. So I'm looking at it already like, can I do this? And it was a tough to see the city the way it was, especially back several years ago. It was like, man, I know we've talked about this. It's just my biggest thing was like, I don't know how my family's a part of ministry in a place like this with what we saw on that trip. It was tough. So I went back with like some sobriety, I think, of like, what would this really mean to say yes to that? But not really wrestling with, was I willing or not? Just kind of wrestling with, what is it going to mean?
Right. Yeah. I remember say your family ministry, because you guys were in kids and the kids would come early and play in the gym and do stuff while y'all would set up. And, here, the kids come to church, but they don't go to PSU, and it is different. And there's a lot of adjustments that happen slowly over time, I suppose. You start to normalize the difference and all that sort of thing. But you came here also without support, in the sense of like, I'd raise support. Praise God. Thank you, everybody that supports us. We need the support, and we kind of come up with some creative ways to hopefully get some more support. But you'd have a job, and we're able to bring that here. So you want to tell us about that?
Yeah. This kind of I'll summarize it and not talk too much about it, but it kind of goes back a little bit further. You'd mentioned, I was a firefighter when we first came to Georgia. I had been in the Navy. I was getting out of the Navy right at the time that we came to Georgia. Was like, I got out of the Navy. That allowed me to not have to try to transfer all that up to Atlanta. But I was working as a firefighter and was able to get on with the city of Cartersville. And that was, just my job. So at the time, like, I had no desire to quit that job. It's, kind of a career job. I totaled it about 10 years. So, you get enough seniority and pensions, and it's kind of like, that is what feels safe and secure. And I wasn't trying to get out of it. That was the career path I was in. So I'll get into it more in a minute, how I got out of it. But along with that, like pretty much every firefighter, because you only work 10 days a month, you work 24-hour shifts. So you work usually 24 on, 48 off. Anywhere I ever worked, that was our schedule. So you have a lot of time off. Again, you're working all of your hours in chunks. Sometimes you don't sleep for 24 hours. Most times you do. So you can kind of work on your off days. So you need kind of like a flexible-ish side job kind of thing. For a long time, I worked at 2 fire departments. I part-timed at one. So like you'd work a shift and then you just roll straight to the next department, work another shift.
Whoa.
And sometimes most of the time that was fine, because most of the time you get to sleep a little bit. Sometimes it wasn't like, you're up all night and then you just roll straight to the next one. And thankfully when they know you're a part-timer, it's kind of like, oh, you're up all night. Well, yeah, catch a nap real quick or whatever. Like they were very understanding. So I'm very thankful for, it was not a hard second job, but it was like being gone from home 48 hours in a row. So it was tough. Sometimes just tough even wanting to be there. You're just like, I don't care. I just want to go home.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's what I did for a long time as my part-time job. And then I started a side business doing leather work, kind of out of nowhere, because one of my friends where I was working wanted if you're not familiar with firefighting, our helmets have a badge on the front, or a front, called a shield, a front, but it's a piece of leather and it usually has like your name, your rank, and your truck number on it. It's just like it's really aesthetic. It identifies who you are, what your rank is in the truck company that you're on. When you're on a fire scene, you're wearing a mask and all that. You can't usually see people's faces, so it helps you know whose crew is who belongs with who, that kind of thing. So anyway, I started making leather helmet fronts. It's kind of a very niche little thing, but it's kind of crafty and artsy, and it was fun for me. So I made one for my friend. He showed it to someone, and I made one for him, and it just kind of spiraled. This was a long time ago, so it was kind of on the cusp of Facebook businesses, where it's like, well, if you can start a Facebook page, you can start a business, and then you have to figure out taxes after you start accidentally making money. But it just started like that. It was like one friend wanted, and then another friend saw it, wanted one, and then it kind of took off when I had a friend that traveled and taught a lot of classes. Like that's kind of normal in the fire service. If you're really good and you have certain certifications in like a technical rescue skill set, it's very normal to travel and instruct in different departments. And so I had a guy that was a friend of mine that would travel and do extrication training, like cutting up cars and stuff. And he had me make him like a special name front with his name on it. And so that got around. And then there's a chief that retired that was pretty well known in the area. And so they had me make him like a retirement shield. And anyway, it just kind of spiraled word of mouth and turned into like a very small side business, making a few $100s a month kind of thing. And then thankfully, so to summarize that more, that just turned into, it was enough that became my full-time, part-time job. So when we came to Georgia, I didn't have to find a second fire department to work at or a part-time job. Like I was just doing the leather work on the side, but it was making, honestly, at that point, almost what I was making at the fire department. It was kind of like balancing out my salary, and I wasn't working anywhere else. So yeah, I'd been doing what I do now for quite a long time. And yeah, and in ministry, you want to just kind of talk how that brought me all the way to here? So all that to say, it was a business that had kind of always been around. It was certainly not on my mind like, hey, this could give me freedom and flexibility for ministry. It was just like a job, the thing that I was doing that I found out could make money. And I felt like, especially when I was young, like that's a lot of the times the way I made decisions. Like I'm praying about things, but really I'm just doing stuff. And thankfully God was working through my just kind of doing things, along the way. And so what I didn't know, God was kind of building a business that just kind of happened naturally. Like, honestly, I think I have only ever spent like $5 on advertising because I got a Facebook credit. Back in the day, it was like, here's $5 to spend on an ad. And I did it one time and never did it again. It just very naturally grew.
Is like 3 impressions or something.
Yeah, now it's nothing. But back then that was kind of like, hey, here's to get you started. And I was kind of like, back then it was also not very good. So I couldn't target like firefighters. I didn't care where it was because it was online, but it was kind of like nobody's going to care about this except for firefighters. And you couldn't narrow it down based on like your occupation or anything. I'm sure now you probably can, but yeah, back then it was like, that gave me no help. You showed it to 100 people and none of them are firefighters. They don't even know what this means. So it doesn't matter. But anyway, God really blessed. And like I said, I didn't really know, I didn't have a plan for it. It was like, my plan is to retire from the fire department, but this provides the extra income I need to live. Fast forward, I'll just go ahead and fast forward through. That's what I did the whole time we were at Cartersville, pretty much. I said I enjoyed it. It was nice. I never intended for that to be a full-time job. Probably wouldn't have thought it could have been, but it got to a point that it really started with when you asked us to take over children's ministry. I knew that saying yes meant I couldn't work as much as I was. And so it was like,
just to the way your shifts were, you
Yes.
would miss several Sundays and Wednesdays on different rotations and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. The schedule of the fire department is you got a lot of time off, but it's pretty inflexible. You work 24 on, 48 off, holidays, Christmas, birthdays, like that. That's always what you work. Obviously you have time off and holidays pay like that you can use, but you don't get weekends off. You're not going to be at church every Sunday. So it was a combination of, I knew I'm too busy. And the job that is the most safe and secure is the one, though, that guarantees I'm missing every third Wednesday, every third Sunday, every third night of conference. It's pulling me out of ministry all the time. And I knew that I couldn't really lead a ministry being there 2/3 of the time, or I didn't feel like I could do that well. I knew that for me, and I want to say that carefully because I know there's firemen that I know that are very faithful in church, and I'm not saying you can't.
Sure. Yeah.
You can't have a busy job and be in ministry. But the thing that you asked me to do, I felt like God was saying you can't do that very well if you're not there all the time. I didn't have a second hand person that could be like, hey, when I'm not here, no worries, someone else has got it.
Yeah.
It really was just me and Lori leading it for a long time. So I knew what God was just showing me was like, you can't do all of it. And so saying yes to ministry means you got to figure out how to probably work less and probably quit your job. And that was terrifying because I appreciated the security of, your paycheck through the pandemic or whatever. It's like your paycheck is very secure. The job may not be, but the security of the job was. So anyway, that led me to kind of being in that crisis of like, well, I think saying yes to what I know God is telling me to do, going back to that full-time ministry thing is like, well, to be more involved in ministry means letting go of this, I think. I was wrestling with that.
I think.
I was like, I was still kind of in that denial. Like, I think maybe I can figure out how to still do both. And it was actually one night we were putting the kids in bed and I was going on shift the next day and it was cold that I was putting him in bed and he said, he's like, oh, you're going back to work tomorrow. I was like, yeah. He said, why can't you just stay home and make shields every day? And I was like, just the innocence of that question, because he was just asking, because it was like, what was convicting to me is God just told me, he's like, it's because you don't trust me is why you can't. Because kind of like I said, I was making as much. And if I actually did that full time, I could make more money on paper. In the end, it kind of levels out because, I lose pensions and insurance and all that. But as far as living money, it's like I can work less and make more. And what I knew God was saying was like, you won't do it because you don't trust me. Because that means you have to trust that I'll bring in orders. Because being self-employed means if no orders come in, there's no money coming in. There is no paycheck. There's no insurance. There's nothing else. And that brought me really to a crisis of just, do I really trust that God will provide for me or not? And at the same time, what I knew that God was showing me was to be careful the things you tell him are a hindrance in ministry. When God is telling you to do something, because I just remember thinking like, oh, this or that or my job. And I just remember God being like, oh, is that the thing that is stopping you from obeying me? It's like, oh, I should probably be careful telling God the things that are going to stop me from doing what he's asking me to do because he can take those away. And not that I ever mean that in a way that I felt like God was threatening or kind of like, oh no, God's going to do something and, take away my ability to work or something. But I think it was just a reminder that all of this security that we think we have, I was saying it was a secure job and that the paycheck was stable. I knew what I made. I knew what my pension would be. I could calculate it all the way to my retirement, know this is what I will make all the way till I end. And then like if I don't even advance, and then this is what I will bring home every month after I retire at this age. And like there's a lot of security and comfort in that. And I just felt like God was saying, one, you just don't trust that I can provide. That's why you wouldn't. And the other thing was just, just being careful, telling God which thing you're putting ahead of obeying him. And because he could take that away. Like I said, the paycheck is stable, but the job is not safe. Like, okay, if you got to be healthy to do that. I knew guys that, not even like drastic, scary injuries, but just you can have injuries. We had a lieutenant that had to retire early right before I got there because he developed vertigo or something. I remember meeting him. I didn't really know him well, but he couldn't climb ladders anymore. So it's like, well, can't really do this if you can't
lose
get
your
up on
pension.
He might have been vested enough to still have his pension, but like for me, it would have been, if I wasn't vested enough, it's like there's no real security in that. So, like I said, I never felt, I don't want to convey God was threatening me. It was a sobering thought of like, one, I guess I just really don't trust that God can provide another way that's out of my control. And 2, I'm telling God the things that I'm putting ahead of obeying.
Yeah.
And those, I think, were both very sobering thoughts. And it was honestly within, I think, like the same day that I was kind of like, okay, I think I just need to leave the fire department. And that was terrifying because, I didn't go to college for anything else that I could fall back on. Letting all of my certifications lapse, letting my EMT stuff go. It's like, that's the only way I learned to make money, that between the Navy, the fire department and stuff, like that's all I did as an adult. So, I had another slight, not crisis of faith, but kind of a moment of faith. I think it was about a year later because, all your certifications, you have continuing hours, but they end and you either turn in your hours to keep your certifications or you don't. And I actually had enough certification hours or like continuing education hours to keep my EMT license, I think another like 2 years. And I let it all lapse because I knew I was just telling me like, are you going to keep that to have something to fall back on? And, I just knew I needed to let it go. But it was scary because, again, I kind of in that test of faith, we had a dip in the business like we've never had where it was just like really kind of a struggle. It was, we were praying that one order would come in so we could pay one bill at a time. Wow. And at that same time, it was like, well, would it be bad I can keep my EMT license and just work part-time, work a couple of days a month, ride an ambulance. And I knew God was telling me not to. So that was really scary to let that go too. It was just kind of another progression of it. But, so yeah, I was going to say long story short, but that's kind of the whole story. But yeah, it just, the more we got into ministry, the more I knew like I can't pursue the career and ministry in the way that God wants me to. And that's where I say, I don't want to make it seem like you can't have a job or a career and also be in this full-time ministry capacity or mindset. It's just for me, obviously looking back at it now, I couldn't have kept that job and come here.
Right.
So for what God was going to have me do, I couldn't keep a job that was going to tether me to a place. So that's why I of course believe it was the right decision for me. Is I didn't know that at the time because it would seem kind of silly probably to most people, like you can work in children's ministry and keep your job. It's like, well, I probably could have figured that out maybe, but I knew God was telling me not to, to just trust him. And that brought us to here that when it was time to go, it was like, well, there's parameters and things you got to figure out with it, but job wasn't a consideration necessarily. It was a logistical thing to figure out, but I was like, well, I have an online business that I do out of my basement. I just have to have a house with a basement in Portland and we're good. Of course we looked at, I don't want to dismiss it like it was that easy. Of course we were looking at like cost of living. Okay, how many shields do I really have to make? And I have to make more here to compensate for the cost of living is significantly higher. And I have to, instead of owning a home that I can do whatever I want in, I have to find a place that will allow me to register a business there that will let me work out of the garage or the basement. I can't live in an apartment. I have to have space to work and all of those things. So it gave some parameters, but I mean, that's to me considerably easier than like finding a new career out here.
Yeah.
But it gave me that freedom, when I was talking about being willing and available, those steps along the way that I was saying yes to, but I didn't know why. It's kind of like, well, now of course, look back and say, well, that prepared me to be able to come here. So I'm super thankful for it, for sure. And God is, I said earlier, we've been through times where, when Paul talks about learning to abound and learning to be abased and learning to suffer want, like we went through times where, again, it was like praying that we need one order because we got one bill that's going to bounce at midnight and I can't make any money come in. I'm not getting a paycheck any other time. So it was scary to be like, learning to be content and just trust that like God's going to bring in what we need. And that was hard. And on the flip side, we had to learn to abound, where it was like there was temptation sometimes where after going through a month like that, where it's like, hey, here's a $15,000 order that wants to come in. It's like, okay, but that means I got to work this many extra days this month. That means it's kind of counterproductive to being available for ministry if I've got to work.
Right.
Too much. So it's like having to put a limit also on when things are really abounding to say like, okay, but this is what I budgeted and this is what we actually need. We don't need to abound. We need enough.
Right.
And that's not clutter my time that we specifically said we need for ministry.
Right.
It would be very counterproductive to be chasing money and ministry. Of course. So we learned both ends of that, being self-employed. There's struggle in times of need where you have to rely on God. And then there's times where you have to say, is this a blessing or is this a distraction? And like learning to be content and saying, this is enough. This is what we need. And turning down orders, knowing that like, if I say, hey, I can't make any more this month, but you can order next month, knowing that they probably won't come back because they maybe don't want to wait, but being okay with like, okay, then God will bring in orders another way. That's sometimes a hard thing to learn to abound, to say I have enough, and then to trust that God will bring in enough the next month too. Because sometimes it's comes and goes.
Man, that's an incredible lesson for the self-employed world. I'm sure somebody's going to need that. Because you got out of what you got yourself into your situation, not to work more, but then the temptation is to work more again, and to be successful or provide. And really, you've had to learn to trust the Lord this whole way. And now, as you said, it's been able to bring you to Portland. You're here, still self-employed, doing the same thing plus, which we'll get into in a moment maybe. But maybe during this time, is there anything that you would say if you want to give advice to somebody who's considering being in ministry, perhaps not pastoring, but supporting or going out on their own, however you want to take that? What advice would you give?
Yeah, like going as a part of ministry, but unsupported financially, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely like you don't have to. I'm thankful that we have our own business. And what I was going to say, I mentioned this kind of briefly earlier. The business started super slow. It didn't start, like, hey, let's move to Portland, so I'm going to start a business so that I can move. We've actually been doing this for 12 years. So it was just a progressive. When we first started, it literally was, we were so broke or on the edge of broke that it was a huge step for us that when we were first starting to get like any interest at all, we kind of decided like that could be our missions giving, because otherwise we had no money. We were giving what we could, but we were giving like almost nothing towards missions. And we were like, okay, the first order that comes in every month, it was like $80 at that time. We're like, we can give that to missions. And it was scary because like we might get one order for the month or two, it was still like get one or two orders for the month. It was a couple $100. Maybe we'll give the first thing to missions. And then maybe the second shield that comes in might pay like one bill, like maybe our phone bill for the month. And so all that to say, that was what it was 12 years ago. When I actually incorporated or, started LLC 12 years ago, it was a little more steady, but that's how it started. So I'm not saying I've been like full-time for 12 years, but it's been my full-time source of income for 5 years now, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, for most of that time, it was a very solid secondary income. But again, like I didn't know what God was building that up to. It was like in that time where, when I had that moment where Cole was asking me about making stuff from, like at that time, we only took orders for like 2 or 3 days a month, because every single month, like we were full in 3 days and we just had to tell everybody else no. So there was more that could be done. But even at that time, we were learning to like, this is it. That's all we can do. And I think that is a hard thing with being self-employed, is learning like when is enough enough. I think that's one of the biggest things, is because you can always chase more. Yeah. Because you can earn more. Like if you're on a salary, it doesn't matter how hard you work, you're probably only going to make what you get paid for the hour. But when you're like, oh, well, it's only, that's $5,000 more, $6,000 more, I can squeeze that in here. I can work weekends. I can do whatever. And, there's a temptation because you actually get the money for whatever else you're selling. So there is, I think one of the biggest things to learn is like, it's temperance in a different way of saying, this is what I budget and this is what I need. This is an excess. This is enough to provide for my family well, but it's not excessive and now chasing that. So I had to say that built up over time, but then it got to a point that it could sustain us full time. And I'm thankful that it has, but it's not something you can just start when you want to go do something else. But I'm thankful that without me knowing it, that's what God was building us up to. But yeah, I would say any advice for people that want to be in ministry, and as I kind of referenced it, in full-time ministry without a paycheck. I think, you don't have to start your own business. I know there's tons of people that, I in a lot of ways have more admiration for people that are willing to like, I will go be a part of that church plant and just figure out a job. Like, I mean, that's harder than what I did. 'Cause for me, it was hard. A lot
of your variables were the same.
Yeah, my variables were the same. It was like I had to figure out cost of living. I had to figure out business things. I had to figure out registering a business here. But it was like I knew what I was going to do, and I knew it could sustain us. I knew I could make money doing it. It wasn't like go find a new job. So I don't want to make it sound like this is the only way to do it.
Yeah.
But if you are, then yeah, certainly you have to, I think, already have learned how to be content and sufficient and saying, this is all I need, because it's more of a temptation here where everything is more expensive and difficult to like bury myself more in work. Especially when ministry doesn't feel as busy, when it's kind of like, well, I can do more. I can take on more. We have higher bills. I probably need to. And not doing that sometimes is hard, and finding a new balance here that was different than back home.
Yeah.
But I would say, as far as advice though, if you can be self-employed, I think it's great. You need to already be well established in it, I would say. I'm no business guru, so I'm sure people listening that are like real business people. I didn't go to school for business. I was a fireman, so I just have figured it out. But I definitely think on the spiritual side, like you got to learn contentment. You got to have some temperance in even what your business is going to mean. But being debt-free is huge. Like, we got debt-free before I could quit. That was another big thing with quitting the fire department was, being debt-free allows us to have those lean months to where it's like, you still have bills, but nothing's getting repoed or anything like that. If you have a lean month, you can get by a lot easier when you don't have a whole bunch of stuff. So, I mean, it took us years though. I think we had about $80,000 worth of debt. And I just say that as an encouragement to, like, if you got less than that, then it can be done. You can do it. You can get out of it. It took us, I think, 3 to 4 years, and it wasn't easy, but getting out of debt is huge. Staying out of debt and learning the contentment of like what is really enough, because you have to be honest about that. Like, you can't come and be self-supporting and be under-supported in the same way you can't come here being under-supported. You can't go and take care of yourself and not actually be able to take care of yourself. I don't think it would be wise to put your family in that situation of like, we're just going to go do it and figure it out, and not, count the cost.
Yeah, I think that's great, because when you talk about what God challenged you with to go full-time in your business, that's not moving to Portland. That was in an established church with already getting rid of your debt. Is that right?
Yeah, we were debt-free
getting out
before.
of debt. Yeah. So one transition at a time, and we would never say, go figure it out. Like, you need to have faith. Obviously, like, I sold my home to come here before I was fully supported. Maybe I don't recommend that to anyone. But I've just made the opposite point, actually. But don't start your business like there.
Yeah.
Get your life figured out now, and then you can go and be flexible. You can know what your parameters are, how much you make, and make some calculated risks.
Well, and you can know, like, you need to be able to gauge over time. Like, we know summers are really lean. Like, we know summers are the people spend the least, like, discretionary money. Because, like I said, most of what we do is not job critical. And so summers are lean. So it's like you kind of need several years of like, okay, I know it's going to dip down here, but it always gets crazy busy at these times. Like, you kind of figure out how to ride those waves. You don't need to do that. Get here and say like, okay, we're going to start a business in the middle of summer, and then realize summer's a bad time. So yeah, I think definitely like having some stability in that. And like I said, I didn't quit my job to come here. I left the fire department, went full time in 21. And then the first survey trip here was 2023. Yeah. So like, I didn't know anything about it for 2 years. Yeah. So we were well established. And like I said, it was definitely, you have to figure the parameters out and know what they mean. Yeah. But I think it's very similar to in ministry, how you always hear in all the missions class, like you're not going to do something on the field you don't do at home. Mm-hmm. If you can't make a disciple at home, you're not going to learn to make a disciple on the field. We always hear that in a spiritual sense, but I think it's kind of the same in that business sense of like, well, if you can't support yourself at home, don't think like, well, I'll just move there and get a job and figure out how to take care of myself. Like, I'm not trying to put down anybody who's figuring some things out as they go, because you're still going to have some things that are going to be different than you thought. You'll still have to figure it out. But I think if you're going to be self-supported, it's wise to know how to be self-supported before you get to the field. Like, get it done ahead of time, be out of debt. I think that's part of, we talk a lot about being faithful. I think the acronym Andrew Ong would always say was FAT. It'd be faithful, available, and teachable or trainable. Teachable, or willing. But part of that available is like, there is a physical sense of being available. Like, if you can't afford to move, then you might be spiritually available and willing, but you're not really available. Yeah. If you can't leave your job, you're not really available. If you can't go get another job and live on whatever that pays, you're not really available. And you do, especially if you have a family, you also have a biblical responsibility to provide and take care of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're crazy in debt and you can't leave your job and survive on what you can make somewhere else, you're kind of not really very available.
Yeah,
So,
you can still serve locally.
Of course.
Like, you're not
Of course.
unimportant, but as far as relocating for the mission.
Yes, for that specific thing, you're not very
stuck.
available.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice, man. And then we came here, I don't remember when, but we were sitting in Chick-fil-A. That's how our meeting started, right?
Yeah.
We'd go work out, and then we go to Chick-fil-A and talk about stuff and dream before anything was really happening. We started, I don't remember how, talking about making T-shirts and wanting to wear scripture. Maybe it was my idea. I throw ideas out there.
I think it was, yeah.
See if we can wear some scripture. You know how to create stuff, right? And your business is leather work where you use your hands, you draw, and very creative. You did that in children's ministry, murals, and all that sort of thing. And so we started, I don't know how, you bought something and threw something on a shirt. Mm-hmm. And here we are now, and you're like expanding your business. So maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, this might sound like it's a little contrary to what we had just said about like being established in something. Don't try to start new things. No, it's not a new thing. Like, obviously, it's
not like income dependent right now.
It's not income. It can totally, right now, it's not making any money, and it can totally not make money. I said, we just talked about this earlier.
Eventually.
It is making money, but it is not offsetting what it has cost me to get started.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm not living off of this in any way. So it's still definitely like it makes just enough money that I just want to break even, like where I can reinvest and buy more shirts and make more things. I'm content with it but honestly, like, I think I have the patience for that, because that's exactly how like my leather business started. Like, I made one shield that gave me just enough money to buy leather to make the next 2 shields. And then that gave me just enough money to buy that and one piece of equipment that I could make better shields. Like, I wasn't living on that at first. I did say, when we first were taking real orders, that we gave it to missions, but everything I made really extra was like maybe pay a bill, but maybe I got just enough extra to make one.
You're reinvesting it back.
Yeah, it was all reinvesting. I wasn't living on it by any means. So all that to say, I want to make sure I'm not like giving the wrong impression.
Sure.
But yeah, with the t-shirts, it kind of was like a neat hobby. I was like, I want to be able to sell it because I don't want to spend money. Like, you buy a heat press, you buy transfers, you buy shirts. You just made like a $400 single t-shirt. So I was at least trying to sell them and break even so we can make shirts. I think that's how it started. It was like, let's make shirts that we want to wear. And then if we can sell enough to where we can afford to make ourselves shirts and not like just be blowing money, that would be cool. And that's kind of where we're at. Like, it's enough that we can make cool things that we like. And I think honestly, in a creative type business, again, I'm no business guru, but this has been true for me. You kind of have to do something you care about. Like, it's really hard to be like, well, I need a business, so let me find this thing I don't really care about for money. So I think it started very naturally that me and you have been talking about shirts we would want to wear, very specific scriptures like the one you're wearing. That was a big verse. We're wearing, not willing that any should perish.
Heck yeah.
It was a verse that we talked about a lot, and we're like, let's figure out how to put that on a shirt. And so that's definitely how it started. It still kind of pretty much is what it is, as we just...
Yeah, that was the desire. We're here doing evangelism. That's how we're starting our church plant. For anybody listening, was all of our survey trips were, let's go see if we can share the gospel. If people will get saved, let's take an Acts kind of approach, a Pauline approach. And being on the front end of a lot of evangelism is like, let's leverage everything and let's just put Bible verses on our shirts like that are evangelistic, salvific or around the gospel, and not willing that any should perish. It just reminds me when I walk through the city, that's God's will for every person I see. Whatever I think about them or not, that's God's will for them. And we have others that we've developed and are developing, some more fun, creative. You're the creative side, and I'm the words on the shirt kind of side.
Yeah, I think the first two we made were the not willing that any should perish, 2 Peter 3:9, and then the other one was you must be born again. Like that's all it says is you must be born again.
That's my favorite one.
Yeah, I think the little tag that I put on our Instagram, it says like making shirts that help you share the gospel and encourage you in your faith. Yeah. So I feel like it's those two things are our goal. Is hopefully it starts a gospel conversation. I've had one person that saw my shirt and came in like asked me about it. I know Austin had several people like say stuff to him at the gym or whatever about his shirt. So it can directly lead to a gospel conversation. I think that's less likely. But the other thing is like, I want to come up with ideas or just even things that would encourage people in their own faith. Like, you know, the salt and light one. I like that one a lot because it's, for an unsaved person, that probably doesn't mean much, but it's a reminder for the wearer, like, hey, you have a purpose. You're supposed to be salt and light.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, that verse was really meaningful to me. It's some we put on some of our first stickers when we came out here. Like, you know, God's called us to be salt and light where there's darkness and where there's a need. So some of them are geared more towards the person themselves as an encouragement, and some are definitely like a little bit direct, a little bit more gospel focused. And
yeah, some of them are pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
But we're figuring out our style, figuring out how it works. We hope that it blesses people. It gives us cool shirts to wear, but also some of that can slowly start offsetting some of your income and your work. Your leather work is kind of at a place to where you can't outsource it. You can't be any more productive with it. And if you're going to be more flexible for ministry and deal with the cost of living, this is a way that we can flex in different directions.
For sure.
So
I don't feel very pressed in the sense that, like, God provides what we need. And so kind of like, I think it's dangerous to start a business out of need, because like you have to be able to basically, you don't need to need it for a little while. So if you can get something going and then you not need it until it's actually fruitful is probably smart. So that's really how the shield started. I had actually when I first started making shields, when it was like, we can give this to missions, I was still in the Navy part-time. So that basically paid for our insurance. But I mean, I made enough to cover our free insurance and a little bit of money. And then I was still working at 2 fire departments. So I really didn't per se, we were pretty brokish, but I wasn't depending on it for an income.
Yeah.
And that's where, again, like I said, I kind of have more patience maybe than most would in starting it off, because it's like I know how long it took to get organic, like natural traction besides just your friends buying shields from you. Then the first time I got an order from, like, all right, this dude doesn't know anyone I know. He found me online and he started buying something, and now I'm in, you know, all over the US and, you know, Canada. And I don't ship too much internationally, kind of on purpose, because it gets complicated. But the first time I started sending stuff all over the US that was not people I knew was like really exciting, and where it starts actually being a real thing. It's not just friends supporting you anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's where, to me, it's like I am willing to wait it out until it gets to that point of growth.
I'm amazed at your business that with no advertising, I don't know how you get business, and you have to hold business away. Like, hey, we got too much business. I think that's just incredible, man.
I attribute it, in all honesty. I joke that I don't either, because I really don't. But what I do know is, like, I just believe that when God showed me that I didn't trust him, and we took a step of faith to trust him, I just absolutely believe that God's blessed our business because of the reason we're doing it, more than that I'm like a good business person, because I know I'm not. Because it would be smart to advertise. It's not really smart to turn business away. But I'm thankful I have like good customers that are just supportive of me as an individual, and in a weird way that's like, I don't know why they care about not helping me. Like, it's not a charity thing, but they're like loyal. They're like, hey, you've made all my shields. Like, now I'm retiring. I want another one, like from this truck, that truck. I've made both of the Air Force bases, like in Korea and in Japan. Like, I've made, like for their whole cruise, they'll order 70 or 100 shields at a time. So like stuff like that, it's really cool. God's just brought in, like, I don't have any idea how that came about. Like, I don't know any of those guys in South Korea. So, it's really cool. So I totally do attribute it, like, God's just blessed because of the reason that we're doing things, not because I'm really smart. And that's a lot of my conviction behind even doing the t-shirt thing. Cause it's like, I know it's a very crowded business. I know it's like everybody thinks they can start a t-shirt business. And I also know it's not going to make a ton of money very quickly at all, if it ever does. The one potential I do see in it that's neat to me is, as you mentioned, the shields it's almost like being a painter, where if you're selling every individual painting, not prints, it's like everyone is an original piece that you handmade. Your hours can only produce so many things. That's the niche that makes them valuable and special, is that they're all handmade. Yeah. But that also means they're not mass producible. I can't scale it in any realistic way. It's very much a craftsmanship type job. So with that, kind of like we were talking about, when expenses go up, it's like, well, if I make more shields, that's more time for me. I can't outsource it. I can't just order more. Where t-shirts has the potential, like if God really blessed it, it could potentially, I can let someone else make shirts.
Yeah.
I don't have to train anybody. I can order them from a shop. If we got to where it's like really we are selling, hundreds or thousands of shirts one day, 10 years from now, if we're selling a few thousand shirts a month, like I can totally have those screen printed somewhere and make money on that versus me having to hand make 1,000 shirts. So it is the big thing that I see as exciting is like, it does have the potential to scale. And so like if God wanted to provide, so I don't need another job and I'm not per se trying to make a whole nother income, but any amount that kind of going back to learning contentment, it's like, well, anything that I do make in shirts though, that I could either outsource or make faster. If that takes out like, okay, I can take 5 less yields, 10 less yields, that frees me up an extra day or 2 a month.
Yeah.
When we're already always trying to figure out how to, not in the American dream sense, but always work less and make the same amount of money. It's like, this is what I need to make. How can I work the least? I'm
always encouraging you, just so everyone knows, I'm always encouraging you to do that. You need to make more money and work less because we need you in ministry. And you're doing fine. You're doing great. But maybe you can just explain a couple of recent situations to where you got to take time off of work to do a ministry thing, and then there's no one else to do your job. You have to do the job. So maybe hit that for a second.
Yeah, like today, for one, like it's a Tuesday night, and me and you meet every Tuesday. We have Bible study kind of in the middle of the day on Tuesday. It means I basically don't. That was some of what we figured in is like, okay, if I take Tuesday off every week, that's 1 day less of work. That's this many shields. That's this much money. So we got to cut that out of our budget for me to work these days. But that puts me at like, okay, now I don't have buffer days. I got to work at least 4 days a week just to maintain what we need to live. So then when something comes up, recently I had a guy that wanted to meet with me, and I met him on a Friday morning, and it kind of like took my whole Friday, day. And, which was great. He got saved. It was totally worth it.
Let's go, man.
It was fantastic. The downside is then it's kind of like, all right, well, I took Friday off and nobody else was working while I was not working. Yeah. So that means the amount of work I needed to do Friday, I just have to do another day or at night or, on a weekend. And then that starts cutting into time to be with my family and things. So, that's definitely the struggle of anyone who's self-employed is like, if you're not working, nobody is. You get as much flexibility as you want, but you get no paid time off. So
that's right.
You don't get vacation days. You get as much vacation as you want, but you don't get paid for it. So, sometimes that's the struggle and like learning that balance and the discipline of like, okay, I can't take off all the time because then I will make no money. But what is the balance? I don't want to get super far into this, but it's kind of important. Something that God's been teaching me lately is, seeking his kingdom. It's something that I've just come back around to again in my reading. And both at the end of the Old Testament, where, God's telling them about they're not being fruitful and prosperous because they're focused on their own house. He says, focus, build my house. And, I don't want to misquote it, but so I should have maybe wrote these verses down, but I think it's at the end of Micah when he's saying, you work and you put money in a bag with holes in it. And he's talking about like the unfruitfulness of working to build your own things and then God having your leftover time. And he's saying like, build my house first. And then, you'll take care of the rest. I'll take care of you. And, he says a very similar thing in Matthew, famously where he's saying, seek ye first the kingdom of God and all of these things will be added. Like he'll take care of the rest. And it's, more interesting to me that he says the kingdom of God, because Matthew talks a lot about kingdom of heaven, but in this instance, he says kingdom of God. Like that's very direct to us. He's talking about investing in his spiritual kingdom. And so when we take time to do that, just as like a testimony kind of thing, like in that same day that I took off most of that Friday, somehow I still got all that work done. Like I did work a little bit, I think that evening or the next evening or something, but quicker than I should have. I was able to like make up all the work that I missed and like, fine, I'm back on track. So I do feel like God blesses when you.
Yeah, people need to get saved more often. It's still hard though. Like, you become more productive when people get saved. So
I think it goes back to like, I think God just blesses when you're just, when you obey and do what he says to do. And, but that is sometimes hard though, because you still have to be like, well, okay, but what is the realistic balance though? I do still have to plan to work.
Right.
And my full-time job can't be in my spare time. It does still have to be scheduled and planned.
Yeah.
So yeah, going back to the t-shirt thing, though, is like I'm willing to be patient with it. I feel like you only fail when you quit trying to do something. Right now, we're just not making a lot of money at it. So we're just having some lean years in the business. But I feel like more important to me than even being like super financially successful right away is we kind of had this conviction of like, man, I think God wants us to do this thing, even though most conventional wisdom would probably be like, yeah, t-shirts isn't like really the way to make a lot of money. But I do feel like God put on our hearts for a reason. there's things like that I felt like God's asked me to do that in the end, it wasn't really about building another business or making a ton of money, but maybe I'm learning stuff, just learning I'm learning new skill sets. Maybe I'm just learning something that'll be useful later. And he'll be like, actually, you don't need to make shirts, but what you learn doing that'll be profitable in some other area of ministry.
Yeah.
God's done that with me a lot throughout the years where I thought I was doing this for this reason. Then he's like, well, actually don't worry about that. But what you learned is going to be good for what I want you to do next. And so I'm not super worried about it. I enjoy it. It's actually what is still fun to me. The shields I enjoy, like it's fine. It's a job. The more I'm out of the firefighting world, I feel more like I'm kind of a has-been. It's like I'm not in that world anymore, where I still have a lot of inspiration and enjoyment with making shirts because it's like kind of a more active part of my life. I'm doing my devotions like, oh, that's a cool shirt idea. I'm like writing
it's
notes
inspired.
down. Yeah, it's inspiring and fun.
I've kind of tried to challenge us, even challenge our church with, as we're reading the Word of God, let's think about it. And if we're going to create anything, like what does it make you think about? How does it enlighten you? What would you draw based on this verse? What kind of song would you write based on this verse? And I love that. I can tell when you get those moments of creativity, it's like, I'm supposed to be working, but I have this thought and I need to draw it or think about it or whatever.
I got to at least sketch it out and then put it in that folder that like, okay, I'll come back when I have time.
Yeah.
I at least wrote the idea down,
I love that part about it though, that it's not just a random idea or some trendy thing. We're taking God's word and processing it and putting it on shirts. By the way, people need to buy Script T-shirts so that you can lead more people to Jesus, man.
Yeah, there you go.
How do they find Script Tees?
We have a Instagram. It's Script Tees PDX. It has 2 T's, like a lowercase and uppercase, but I don't think that matters in the Instagram handle. But like script as in scripture and then T's. And then we have a website now that it's called chapterandverse.store. I haven't done a great job of like really, I think, explaining what that tagline means. It was something we came up with.
Sure.
Or that your sister-in-law came up with us, that kind of encompasses more than just like T-shirts. And we really like, and I think people in our fellowship would kind of appreciate that, like chapter and verse. It's really that everything that we do, we want it to have like a chapter and verse reference. It's not like, here's a spiritual thought.
Right.
It's kind of like, well, this came from a chapter and a verse. And we want that to be evident in the shirts. And my thought too is like, I don't want it to only maybe ever be shirts. I don't have really any more to say about that because I don't really know, but I think it's cool to be open to making other things. So I think just but chapter and verse, we're taking a class right now with Alan Shelby, and he says something he says, book, chapter, verse that for me. Yeah. So it's just like cool. Like the way he says, I'm like, man, that's kind of funny because that's the way we think. And I appreciate that about, the people in our fellowship and us. A lot of our philosophy about the Bible is really take the chapter and the verse very seriously. And so that's where our ideas come from is, again, it's not like a trendy, inspirational saying. It's kind of like, man, there was something that one of us read that made us think like this would be cool on a shirt for a reason. Some of it's very related to things we personally went through. Some of it's just, for me, sometimes I just kind of think in pictures, like I see something like, oh, that would represent cool in this way. Like this kind of a picture would illustrate that. And I think it's kind of cool. And so some of it's like that. Some of it's like, it's actually kind of a meaningful verse to us for some reason at that time,
Or for me, it's a preachy verse that's like, read my shirt whether you want to or not. Yeah. I love that, walking around Portland and people see my shirt and then they kind of look at me like, oh wait, what was
they do like a double take?
Was that real? And I love that, man. I have so many people at the gym that won't talk to me with their headphones on. Will just, nod, but they'll read my shirt and it says, you must be born again. I'm like, let's go. We're getting the scripture out one way or another, man. I love that. Well, I'm thankful for you. You really balance me out. Your slow, steady, take 10 years to build a business is kind of the opposite of the way that I've been functioning for, let's try new things. Let's do this. Let's put all our eggs in that basket. And so I think it's been really helpful to have like someone I can trust that's different than me to meet with. And we both, this might be weird, we are in Portland, almost like a marriage. We bring the best out in each other, but we're very different kind of people.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm thankful for you. I wouldn't want to do this without you and your family and all that we get to do together in ministry. Your Bible study at PSU is just an incredible contribution to our church. And to see you grow from kids ministry to college ministry, if you will, it's it's awesome. And I think it's really that particular move has given you a lot of life and energy. You have vision for that, and to really put the wind in your sails like last several months or 6 months or something like that. So,
but I'll say too, like, you mentioned this, but I just want to say too, like, I'm thankful that things are being fruitful, but I also don't have any delusion that it's really that I'm doing something special.
Sure.
Like, I'm doing the exact same thing you're doing. I'm doing the same thing that anyone, leading any ministry is doing. It's really nothing special, but I do think we have a special group of young people that are coming together, and that is exciting. Like you said, it kind of gives life and vision. I think that is going back to like even children's ministry. That's not a ministry I would have called myself to or thought that I would be good at. And same with college ministry. I don't think it's something I'm necessarily good at instinctively. And I don't think it's being fruitful because of me, but I am thankful that I think God kind of gives you both grace and burden for things he asks you to do. So in the same way I had a burden and a vision for children's ministry when that was what I was doing, now, like, it's not like I was just always the kids guy. It's kind of like, man, I'm glad I'm not doing that now, because I have no vision or direction for it. But now God's giving me a real burden and a vision for a college ministry that back at Oakland Heights, like, I have no clue what they did. It's like they were upstairs, we were downstairs. I don't know what they did.
Different things.
Yeah, they did different things. And I never saw it as that important. It was just like, that wasn't my world. And I honestly just rarely gave it a second thought of what they did for their growth. It's just like they're doing the same thing we're doing up there. But now it's like, man, just seeing lives that are changing and people getting involved and in this stage of life where it's like, man, they're making really meaningful and impactful decisions about their futures, and to factor God into that at this age is so crucial. Before going back to my testimony, before you just, start, if you never have a foundation at all, you're even going to be more prone to just get busy and drift away from any kind of faith at all. So it's like kind of zero that in, factor your decisions around God, not the other way around. Like, get serious about your faith and then consider what your career should be, what you want to major in, all of those decisions that they're making. And so I think it's like, man, God's giving me a burden for the young people that he's put in our lives. And so I certainly don't think it's anything special that I'm doing, but I'm very thankful to be. I'm thankful though to have like something that I feel a purpose in for sure. And it's not like, well, I'm just doing this because it needs to be done. It's like, I actually do want to do that.
Which takes some time and figuring out. Maybe another time we can talk about the roles or how we've tried to figure out who serves where in a church plan. Things move around, and finding a right fit. I don't know that we ever did anything on purpose. It's just what we've been doing. You just figure things out. But I think God honors the sacrifice. So obviously you made significant sacrifice to be here. You put your retirement and your future on the line. And before you ever knew it would turn into a ministry or something, you were just faithful to the Lord. And now he's given you what's really our most fruitful ministry so far in our church. And I don't even care. I think that's awesome. It's a testament to God's faithfulness that when you put it all on the line and just say, all right, Lord, I'll obey you, then he has a way of honoring that in ways that we could not ever calculate, we could not process or predict. And so I think you're an example of that for us, and a good steward and a friend. So I'm grateful for that. But we do need to wrap up our time. So we can find you at chapterandverse.store.
Yes.
And Script Tees.
PDX. Yeah.
PDX.
Regular Script Tees is taken. So I put PDX is like the abbreviation for Portland. Yeah. Like for anyone who doesn't know that, that's what PDX means. So I thought that was kind of a cool tie-in anyway to like, we're here, we're in Portland. It's local.
We're still trying to figure out how to be local.
So it's Script Tees PDX. Yeah. That's the Instagram. And then, the chapterandverse.store is our online store if you want to check it out.
Yeah. Well, please support David. Buy some shirts. Send them to your father, brother, sister, mother, and everybody else so that David can lead some more people to Jesus and be flexible for ministry. And if you want to wear the gospel, you can just get one yourself, put some verses on your shirt, and hopefully they'll preach to all your friends, whether they want it or not. If you do want to wear these shirts, by the way, be nice to people. Don't be a jerk, because you represent the Lord and his word.
For real, right?
So you should be sober. There's a couple we have, pretty intense ones, like Jesus is the Lord. It's a big back piece. Be respectful when you're wearing that, because it's kind of bold. It's loud. So do that. But check David out, and we'll see you on the next one.